there is big news in Canada. Canada has always had a pretty robust, like, anti-communist Ukrainian community. We've talked about it before. There's literally like monuments dedicated to like actual Nazis and shit, or actual Nazi collaborators, or people who were directly a part of like Nazi brigades. And now it's coming to a more prominent position where people are more aware of it. We're going to talk about that as well. Obviously today, there's so much to cover. Jesus Christ. Saying that someone fought Russia during World War II means that they were siding with the Nazis. It's such a weird thing to say. This doesn't mean that you have to love Stalin or anything. You don't have to hug and kiss Stalin or even be a communist, really. Let's talk about Canada. Oh, Canada. Canada watchers already know that there's like a big Ukrainian diaspora in Canada that has been like very openly celebrating, you know, Bandera, Nazis, Nazi collaborators and whatnot. There's like a lot of people that live in Canada, or historically speaking, like they're very, very openly anti-communist and have been able to kind of get away with being anti-communist as like Ukrainians, and have people not really question like, wait a minute, like you're Ukrainian, but you're anti-communist, you're anti-USSR. That's fine. Okay. But like from what time period exactly? Like, what do you mean you're, you know, anti-USSR Ukrainians? What does that mean? Now, does this mean that there are plenty of anti-USSR people in Ukraine right now? Of course. But if you, I don't know, immigrated into Ukraine in and around like 1948 and onward, right? And you are openly anti-USSR, and you just kind of kept that energy, like it gets a little weird. What do you mean you fought in World War II? Oh, did I say immigrated into Ukraine? I meant immigrated into Canada. What's going on there? Like, what's happening? Well, you know, what's happening is something that we've talked about a lot, and people actually do get very mad whenever I cover this. But like, I've talked about the national interests, or the nation-building interests of Ukrainians being unfortunately tied to some less than savory individuals historically. You know, individuals that participated, facilitated in the pogroms, and also sided with the Nazis while doing so because they thought maybe, you know, the Red Army, USSR, maybe we'll be able to carve out our own nation state outside of the USSR, outside of, outside of that. And of course, a part of that was also taking Jewish Ukrainians and throwing them in camps and killing them. Same with Polish individuals as well. So there is that history, you know. There are plenty of countries in that region that have similar complicated histories, of course. And of course, our boy in Canada, this man, Yaroslav Hunka, got a standing ovation in Congress, in the Canadian Congress the other day. And everyone was like, wait a minute, what's going on? So let's take a look at what happened.
The federal liberals under attack from opposition parties and Jewish groups after a Ukrainian veteran who served in a Nazi military unit in...
So first of all, they didn't present it as such. They did not say, yeah, Parliament, whatever, not Congress. Who cares? Shut up. Nobody cares about your fake country, okay? Go celebrate more Nazis. In America, we don't do that. Just kidding. We, of course, do that in America, too. But this is such a funny thing to happen in Canada because they're like they love the aesthetics of liberalism so much that even their conservatives love the aesthetics of liberalism. There's a lot of things that I want to mention here with this man. When this news story first came out, they presented it as a patriotic Ukrainian who fought against Russia in World War II. That is how they covered it. I just want you to understand something. This is a much more important part of the story, in my opinion, than like the actual story now. Once everybody realized like that means he was a Nazi, they covered it. They said he served in the Ukrainian army against the Russians during World War II. That is, of course, a very interesting way to frame someone. Hopefully, I guess with the secondary assumption that you know that other people are not going to question it, and they're going to think like, oh no, USSR is bad, Russia is bad, obviously, right? Yeah, except regardless of what your position is on Stalin or communism in general, or Marxism, Lenin, any of that shit, there's one thing that the Western world is united on. Even the fucking Germans, as a matter of fact. And that is that Nazis were bad. If you were fighting against the Nazis, you were good in that particular moment. And the USSR happened to be very good at killing Nazis, and specifically Ukrainians that were also a part of the army of the USSR were very good at killing Nazis and also died a lot. Like a lot of people in Ukraine died as a consequence of, fighting against the Nazis. Now, of course, on the other side, there were Ukrainians who did not want to fight alongside the USSR against the Nazis and thought maybe we could use this as an opportunity to carve out our own nation state of Ukraine that is totally removed of the USSR and communist scourge. They were anti-communists, and they, of course, worked with the Nazis. This is significantly more important than just the Azov Battalion. For those of you who think like, oh, Azov Battalion still is in operation, that is not all that significant. The Azov Battalion is unimportant in the grand scheme of things when I'm talking about like the development of a nationalist movement in Ukraine and its historical formation. That part is significantly more important than just like simply Azov Battalion or a marginal percentage of like open out and about Nazis that fight alongside the Ukrainian forces. This is more so a more holistic issue. So anyway, here is the news story. Originally, they said that, 7 million Ukrainians served in the Red Army, and Ukrainians made up many leadership positions in the Red Army. Of course, do you think it could be miscommunication, or is homie an actual Nazi vet? Oh, no. He is not just any kind of Nazi vet. He is a part of the SS. This is the type of dude that you like execute still. You know what I mean? No, he's like super duper Nazi. He is the guy. Like he is literally the type of guy that normally he would have been like tried and executed, or like years later he dies and then like people celebrate his death. You know what I mean? Like it happened like a couple months back. There was like some fucking 98-year-old dipshit Nazi who like passed away and everyone was celebrating it, right? Like it's that type of dude. It's interesting to think about that, because specifically, this is not about like being pro-USSR or being pro-communism, being pro-Marxism, being pro-socialism at all. This is more so like being anti-Nazi. And for a very long time, at least like some of the older Ukrainian diaspora in Canada has kind of really pushed this narrative of like, we were trying to just build a nation state, and it's totally valid. And they've gotten a lot of clout. So let's watch what happened here.
Wasn't just invited to hear Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky speak in Parliament on Friday, but received a standing ovation from all sides of the House of Commons.
So what's really funny about this, by the way, is that like now, of course, the conservatives are fucking attacking Justin Trudeau and being like, typical Justin Trudeau, who did blackface, by the way. Remember when he did blackface? And it's like, bitch, you were there. Every single one of the conservatives in the Canadian Parliament were giving this Nazi a standing ovation. I'm sorry. You can't fucking sit there and be like, oh, I can't believe that this is classic Justin Trudeau mishap. It's like, bro, we saw you on camera. Yeah, I mean, there's an entire Wikipedia segment dedicated to memorials in Canada, to Nazi and Nazi collaborators. A lot of these come from the Ukrainian diaspora. That's what I was talking about. Yeah. On a less talked about thing that happens as well, because there is not a lot of interest in the Western world, like this is a constant. The anti-communist sentiment is so powerful that you can really get away with like being pro-Nazi for a very long time, as long as you just say, no, I'm not a Nazi. I'm just like anti-communist. I'm just anti-communist. Even though the time when you were anti-communist was the time when you were pro-Nazi. Japan has a lot of problematic pro-imperial Japan museums too. Yes, but have you noticed that they're very cool? Because like the Imperial Japan, albeit brutal, and did a fuck ton of war crimes that surprisingly never get covered. Very odd, for the record. Like very interesting that the anti-Chinese, like Manchurian genocidal aspects of like Japanese colonialism in World War II, leading up to the World War II and during World War II, is just like totally a secondary note that nobody ever talks about really. The Ukrainian volunteers on the Waffen SS were those, it's the Galician one, which is a volunteer unit. They're not even like conscripted or anything. They volunteered to sign up after the invasion of the Nazis and knowingly signed up to massacre Jews, communists, and undesirable Slavic groups. They weren't ideologically different or nationalist Ukrainians. They were dedicated fascists who killed women and children. This dude in particular described his experience with the Waffen SS as the happiest time of my life. It was the Nazi Foreign Brigade, It was the SS unit for foreigners. And, you know, it's good to know. It's good to learn about history. It's good to learn about history because I think, like, you know, maybe everyone in the Canadian Parliament should learn about history, I think. I know it's not Trudeau's fault, but no, it is Trudeau's fault. It is, I'm sorry to say this, but this is absolutely 100%, 1,000,000% the entire Canadian government's fault for just being so horny to be anti-communist that you end up propping up Nazis, which is not a shocker if you are even a little intelligent about American history or global history in general, World War II history in general. If you're like even a little bit aware of what the fuck was going on during that time period, then you personally understand, like, wait a minute, this guy was fucking anti-Russian during World War II? Who the fuck, whose side was he on then? It's not that complicated. There's no way this was an accident either. No, it's not. I think that the only accident was, I guess they thought that, like, everyone is so horny against, like, Russia and the USSR and anti-communist that, like, no one will really think twice about what the fuck is going on here. But yeah, these are the photos of the SS Galicia Division veteran who was given a standing ovation by the Canadian Parliament, Prime Minister of Canada, and President of Ukraine. He published these photos himself in this division during training in Germany. He is standing in the middle of the first photo, second to the left photo without a helmet near a machine gun in the third photo. He wrote he volunteered to join the SS Galicia Division in 1943 in Ternopil region in western Ukraine. My peer-reviewed journal article concerning involvement in SS Galicia Division members in mass murder of Poles, Jews, Ukrainians in Ukraine and Poland, including mass executions about 100 Jews, Poles, and Ukrainians in my high school in Pitatsky near Lutsk. And according to the CBC, a top commander of the Nazi SS-led unit accused of burning villages filled with women and children lied to the American immigration officials to get into the United States and has been living in Minnesota since shortly after Second World War. According to the evidence uncovered by the Associated Press, officer and founding member of the SS-led Ukrainian Self-Defense Legion and later as an officer in the SS Galician Division. According to records obtained by the AP through a FOIA request, the Galician Division and the Ukrainian Nationalist Organization he served were both a secret American government blacklist of organizations whose members were forbidden from entering the United States at the time. Here's how they presented him. Oh, yeah, the deputy prime minister's, has Nazi grandparents, by the way. Yes, we've talked about this before as well. Anytime I talk about it, though, everybody yells at me and says, Hasan, what's your suggestion? Like, don't support Ukraine? It's like, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. But, like, don't support Nazis is, I think, a pretty basic fucking concept across the board. So just a reminder for everybody, yes, Chrystia Freeland, the deputy prime minister, has literal fucking Nazi collaborationist grandparents who she also has defended time and time again. I've talked about it time and time again. It basically doesn't even fucking matter. No one gives a shit because you can just kind of like deafen the conversation. Notice how the conversation on the Nazi shit doesn't necessarily revolve around like every single person in Ukrainian parliament not really having any kind of issue with this and having like an open affinity in certain instances towards like anti-USSR Nazi collaborators and direct Nazis, and instead like, oh, what a mishap by Justin Trudeau. Because the only time people even fucking talk about this issue is when they're talking about this issue from the perspective of like back and forth, silly ass political conversations. They're like, oh, this looks bad for Justin Trudeau. It's not just that it looks bad for Justin Trudeau. It is a more spiritual problem in the West and how horny they are against socialism, communism, whatever demonstration of that like they literally openly will defend Nazis and prop up Nazis.